We were sitting on a beautiful day in a beautiful Lake Forest yard. We were enjoying the fullness of full bellies after church last Sunday, after lunch. We were with a guest preacher and his family. Their two little girls had been playing with our twins, but now the older children had scattered, and the 3-year-old Beatrice was left, bereft, without older children, and searching for a playmate among us, satiated, lethargic adults. Finding no one suitable, she settled for me. She wrapped her tiny little fingers around my index finger. She dragged me away from the table and over to the trampoline. There she coerced my resistant body up the ladder through the safety netting. I was hesitant. Lunch had been great going in. "Lay down," she commanded. And I laid down on the trampoline. Then she began to jump. Her jumps were small, but they got me moving without any effort on my part or any stress to my tummy. She got me chuckling, giggling, laughing out loud. If you have a trampoline near you, you know this sound. Those kids laugh. And I felt silly, and I felt embarrassed, and I felt great. Truthfully, I found myself waking up that proverbial but elusive inner child. The experience was bringing back fond memories of my own children when they were that age. I began to relax again. This was so much better than a lawn chair. It was like being rocked on a gentle sea. I looked up at the trees overhanging, looked up at the beautiful blue sky. I found myself fully enjoying a delightful little child who was giving me lots of FaceTime with heaven above. It seemed fun for her to include me in her joy. It was as if she had a God-given mission to save my soul from becoming an old fogey, from becoming too world-weary, too weighed down, too dull to enjoy life. My very favorite Zen saying of all times is this: my barn having burned to the ground, now I can see the moon. This is a statement of enlightenment. Unfortunately, many people, when their barns burn down, do not look up to heaven. Their inner child does not awaken. So they tend to look down, to look at what has been lost, at the dust and the ashes left on the ground. Many people today find themselves dwelling in darkness, dwelling upon bitterness, stuck in their own liturgy, the liturgy that goes something like this: "Why me, Lord? Why me, Lord? Why me, Lord?" Today's gospel lesson tells us about a man who had his own answer to burning barns. Instead of looking for the moon, he decided to build more barns. He decided to gather greater amounts of God's overflowing blessings. As one early gospel commentator pointed out, there were already plenty of places for him to store his surplus. Can you guess where? In the empty bellies of widows and orphans. The more the man locks up his wealth, the heavier both his treasure and his heart will be. And in the end, God will take back his soul. Obviously, he was not using it. Later in the afternoon, I would think of Dante. Dante being led by his beloved Beatrice through the realms of heaven in Paradiso. Then I realized I had experienced joy. It was a feeling of deep joy, light joy, fun joy, serious joy. Children love to be enjoyed. This love is one of God's primal gifts to the human soul. But even as I was enjoying the joy of this child, I realized that God enjoys his stuffy older children like me, enjoying being childlike with his younger children. Joy is given as it is being shared. As the gospel tells us, enter into the joy of your Lord. And indeed, the joy of the Lord was being enjoyed through her. The event sent me back to an author I had loved many years ago, Thomas Traherne, priest and a poet. Traherne's brief life covered three very distinct eras in England. He grew up during the Parliamentarian Wars. He grew up during Civil War in England. His childhood was filled with the horrors that today afflicts children in numerous war-torn environments. The control of his hometown in England changed hands repeatedly, being captured and plundered several times. There was constant danger, oppression, hunger over the course of his childhood. In the civil warring, Traherne saw people suffering everywhere from a poverty of vision, unable to see the true riches of soul, and instead filling their storehouses with a lot of petty stuff. But Traherne would not become a critic. He would become a poet to sing for souls, to sing for the true joys of the Lord. And his poetry became a gateway for joy. If you have ever gazed for a while into a newborn baby, you have seen a soul full of pure intelligence and totally void of knowledge. In every generation, the adult world has imposed the knowledge of good and evil upon this sublime primal creation. Traherne presents a fascinating tour of a young child's perception of the world. He writes, "The pure and unsullied perception I had from the womb, and that divine light with which I can see the universe, by the gift of God they attended me into this world, and by his special favor I remember them still. Everything appeared new and strange at first, inexpressibly rare, delightful, and beautiful. I was a little stranger who at my entrance into the world was saluted and surrounded by insurmountable joys. My knowledge was divine." Traherne would struggle with two profoundly different realities, and he wrote about them with great clarity and beauty. He related details of primal vision, how he saw the world as an infant, how the trees were glorious, how children looked like angels, how dust looked like gold in the sun. But he also came to share how he came to see a very broken and painful reality. These two visions dwelt with him as he matured, and as he raised all the "why me, Lord?" questions. But he would not dwell there. He wrote How can I believe that God gave his Son to die for me, who, having power to do otherwise, gave me nothing but rags and hovels? How comes it to pass that I am so poor, of so scanty and narrow a fortune, enjoying few and obscure comforts? How can I believe in a gracious and generous God? His barn had burned to the ground. But in his beautiful poetry, Traherne has us dwelling upon a greater reality. He invites his readers into his joyful mission, not of seeing the moon, but of seeing the world aright. He writes, "Your enjoyment of the world is never right till every morning you wake up in heaven. You see yourself in your Father's palace and look upon the skies, the earth, and the air as celestial joys, having such revered esteem of all, as if you were among angels. You never enjoy the world aright till you can sing and rejoice and delight in God as misers do in gold. Yet further, you never enjoy the world aright till you so love the beauty and of enjoying it that you are jealous and anxious to persuade others to enjoy it too." I am so glad you got out of bed this morning and you got dressed and you came to this service, because this too can be a gateway of joy. This morning, let us realize and dwell upon the truly natural and holy reality of joy given to us by God. Let us bring healing to our souls, and to the souls of others, and to the soul of the world, wherever we have fallen into ashes in the oppressive knowledge of good and evil. And let us go forth smiling, a little bit of a bounce in our steps, rejoicing in the evangelism of joy. Amen.